let's get into a full overview of how you guys are going to be able to get this card step by step. In this video, I want to show you guys the $80,000 Navy Federal credit card and how you guys are going to be able to qualify and get this card yourself. So let's get right into the video. And first, I want to just introduce the card to you guys. It is the Flagship card. It's the cream of the crop. That's why it's called the Flagship card. It is the best card with Navy Federal that you guys can get your hands on. So if you're able to get this card, and I'm going to teach you guys exactly how you're going to be able to get this card, it is a very high looked upon card in the credit game. So let's go over some key details and tell you guys how to get it. So first, some key details of the card. This card has a credit limit all the way up to $80,000. And the thing about this card is it may start with a small limit, but you can slowly build that limit up into an $80,000 card. And I'm going to explain that to you guys step by step. And some more details of this card is it has an annual fee of $49. And that is honestly, in my opinion, very negligible if you're able to get this card to a very high limit, let's say 50K plus, because then you basically have a super duper high credit limit card that you guys can get very easily for only a $49 annual fee, which is very, very low. And with this card, you also get 3x points on travel and you get 2x points on everything else. So it's basically like a 2x catch-all card and then 3x points on travel. So this is honestly one of their best credit cards, and nothing really competes with it in the sense that no other card gets 2x on everything else and can go up to a 80K credit limit. While, if you guys know, there is a cash rewards plus card, which is the green card with Navy Federal. That card gets 2% back on everything, but the maximum limit on that card is only 50,000. While on this card, it's 80,000. So that's why this card, in my opinion, it is the better card. It is the Flagship card with Navy Federal. This card also gets you $120 in statement credits for TSA pre-check. This card pays for itself because you're getting $120 while only having to pay $49 for that annual fee. So this card is a gem. So now that we know some of the key details of this card, some of the important facts, let's talk about some frequently asked questions. One of the first questions that a lot of people ask is, what is the minimum credit score? And the answer to this question is that there is no minimum credit score with Navy Federal. A lot of their stuff is calculated based on internal score that I'm going to be talking about soon. Another question that is asked a lot is, what is the average starting limit? And for this question, it really depends on your credit and on your internal score, but usually it's around 5 to 25K. And then we can slowly start increasing that to get it all the way up to 80K. But now let's get into a full overview of how you guys are going to be able to get this card step by step. So the first thing that we're going to want to have to do is have an account or open an account with Navy Federal. I'm going to tell you guys how to do that step by step. Then we're going to want to increase our internal score. And this is going to improve our chances of getting this card because most of the products with Navy Federal, they go based on your internal score with them, basically the relationship you've built with them to be able to approve you for their credit products. So we want to increase that as high as possible. And I'm going to tell you guys exactly how. Then we're going to want to apply for the card, actually completing the Flagship card application. And I'm going to tell you guys what you want to put on that application to be able to get approved. Then we want to manufacture spend, basically a hack to be able to spend on that credit card, paying off a certain amount on that card and then paying it back to be able to then increase our credit limit with step 5, the credit limit increase hack. And I'm going to tell you exactly how we can increase our credit limit and when to apply for credit limit increases to be able to reach all the way up to that $80,000 credit limit with Navy Federal. So let's get right into it. So the first thing is going to be getting into Navy Federal. And there's mainly 3 ways, and I'm going to talk about each one now. First is military, and you can easily get in if you or a relative you have is in the military. You simply just want to call up Navy Federal, tell them you want to open an account and that you or one of your family members is in the military. And this is the most straightforward way and probably the easiest way. most people get into Navy Federal nowadays, and it is probably the most common. So that's option number one. But if you guys aren't in the military, don't worry, there's two more methods on how you guys can actually get in. The second method is actually the roommate hack. So if you live with somebody already in Navy Federal, they can get you in technically because you live with a current member. If you guys live with a member, or you guys can get a lease document saying that you live with a Navy Federal member, then you guys are able to get in because you live with that member. There are some ways that people kind of hack this where, let's say you know a member, but you don't really live with them. You can basically get a lease document or some type of document, a utility bill that you pay at that person's house with your name on it, and then go to Navy Federal, tell them you live with the roommate, and then provide them that document. So then you're able to show that you live at the same address as a Navy Federal member. So that's one of the hacks that people like to do. And the third is the most straightforward, is getting somebody's access number or asking somebody for it. So basically, if somebody is already in Navy Federal, you can ask them to technically give you a referral code, their access number, to get in. And this is pretty much the most straightforward way that will qualify you to join Navy Federal. And you can kind of ask around if you know like a friend or somebody else that has a access number and is already in Navy Federal. You can ask them to kind of invite you to join by them providing you their access number, and it's pretty straightforward. The big thing that I have heard with this is sometimes accounts can be linked. So if the person that you invited with your access number, if they do something wrong, it could come back to haunt you, but that's not always the case, and usually they're not really tied together. So your miles may vary with that, but that is pretty much the most straightforward and easiest way to get into Navy Federal if somebody just provides you that access number. So with these three methods, we should be able to join Navy Federal and then start getting access to all of their credit products. So now that we're in Navy Federal, we want to work on increasing our internal score. And this is how Navy Federal actually bases our approvals on our credit products, is on our internal score with them. So the first and biggest thing that I want to recommend to you guys is setting up direct deposit on the Flagship checking account. So basically, setting up direct deposit, it increases your internal score in many ways, but the main reason why is that it demonstrates to Navy Federal that you have a steady income stream and a good pattern of financial stability, because you guys have money coming in predictably every single month, and they know with that money you're going to be able to pay off whatever credit product that you guys get. The next thing I would recommend is to have the Flagship checking account, because this is the highest tier checking account with Navy Federal. Like the Flagship card, you need to get the Flagship checking. So if you guys want to be able to marry Navy Federal, by getting the Flagship credit card at $80,000, first you got to date them a little bit by having the Flagship checking account and consistently putting deposits into that account. So we got to date before we marry. So that is what we want to do. And this is just going to demonstrate a higher internal status because you have the best of the best checking account with them. It's just going to demonstrate a lot of loyalty that you're in it for the long term with Navy Federal. And this account is pretty easy to maintain. I think if you guys have over $500 or over $1,500 in that account per month, there's no monthly maintenance fee at all. So this is pretty much a free checking account that you guys can get. And if you're getting direct deposits in there, even better, because the account is not going to have a maintenance fee. And then finally, the biggest thing that I can recommend you guys to do is to get a pledge loan with Navy Federal. And I do have a video on my channel how you guys can get a $40,000 pledge loan. I'm going to leave that video right up here if you guys want to go check that out. But here, the pledge loan is going to increase your internal score by basically building positive payment history with their own credit system. If you guys are paying down that pledge loan month by month by month and then finally pay it off, this is going to give you the best internal credit score with them because they're seeing that you can pay off a credit product. So this is going to give you the best chances and increase your internal score the most to get you that Flagship card and honestly any other card with Navy Federal. So now that we know how to get into Navy Federal and increase our internal score, let's talk about actually applying for the card. And I'm going to give you guys some key tips on what I would recommend for you guys in each of these scenarios. So once you have done everything else that I mentioned before, you're going to want to apply for the card online. And usually they will do a hard pull to your TransUnion credit report. So you want to make sure that your TransUnion credit report is unfrozen, because if the TransUnion is frozen, they're most likely going to want to pull another credit report like Experian or Equifax. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, but this is kind of like a little gem that I'm going to throw in. If you guys want Navy Federal to pull a different credit report than your TransUnion, you simply just have to freeze, let's say, your TransUnion and Equifax, and they're most likely going to want to pull your Experian. If you want them to pull your TransUnion, then you guys can just unfreeze your TransUnion and then freeze your other two bureaus. They're going to definitely pull TransUnion. That's the most common. And I also have seen them pulling your Equifax. If you guys freeze your Experian and TransUnion, you can get them to pull your Equifax, but I honestly don't recommend that. I would recommend you guys to freeze your Equifax and then freeze whichever one you don't want them to pull. So if you want them to pull TransUnion, freeze your other two. And if you want them to pull Experian, freeze your other two. Wouldn't recommend you guys really allowing them to pull your Equifax, just because of how hard things are to remove from your Equifax report if you guys are going to want to, remove that hard inquiry. Now let's get into kind of some more case scenarios on actually applying for this card in different situations. So if you guys have a high credit score and a high internal score, this is going to give you guys the best chance of approval, and I would definitely recommend you to apply for the card. You'll definitely get probably approved for anywhere between 5 to 25K right off the bat with Navy Federal. The second case scenario, which is not as ideal as the first one, is having a low to mid credit score and a high internal score. And this gives you a moderate chance of approval with anywhere between 5 to 20K of a credit limit when you first apply for that card. And then finally, the last situation, which I don't recommend you guys apply if you're in this situation, is if you have a low credit score and a low internal score. This, you shouldn't even be applying for any credit products with them yet. You need to start building that internal score first, get direct deposit, get the flagship checking, get a pledge loan. And then once that internal score has been, bumped up, increased by doing those things from before, then we can then move into, the mid chance of approval by at least having a low credit score and a high internal score to have a good moderate chance of getting approved for the card. And I have seen it over and over again. People with low credit scores in the 500s, 600s get approved for it just because they have a good relationship with Navy Federal. So that's what we want to do to be able to get this flagship credit card with Navy Federal. If you guys are still struggling with getting this card, go ahead and leave a comment with your current situation and why you haven't been able to get approved. And I'm going to try to help you guys in the comments, or leave me a DM on Instagram. I'll try to help you guys down in the DMs. But most of you guys honestly should be able to get approved if you're able to get in to Navy Federal. Now that you guys applied for the card, most likely got approved, I want to give you guys a roadmap to achieving an 80K limit over time. And most of the time, we're going to start with a lower limit on the card, and you're likely going to get approved if you have a good credit and a good internal score, anywhere between 15 to 25K. If you were on that, moderate credit score and, moderate internal score, you probably got approved anywhere from 1,000 to 15,000. And that's still good, because I'm going to tell you guys can increase that limit. Even if it's 1,000, 5,000, it doesn't matter, all the way up to 80,000 over time. And I'm going to tell you guys exactly how. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do is wait 91 days after you got that first credit card approval to apply for your first credit limit increase. And this can be 91 days after you activated the card, or 3 statement cycles in. So you activate the card, you use the card. Once you hit 3 statement cycles, so you click on the card in the app and you see that there's 3 statements for 3 different months, then that's when I would recommend for you to apply for that first credit limit increase. And the maximum that you can get on that card should be $8,000. Every credit limit increase with Navy Federal, the maximum is going to be $8,000. And they're basically going to determine how much you get approved for. And if you guys want to get that maximum credit limit, this is how we almost guarantee that, by basically doing a manufacturer spending hack. And I have another video on my channel that explains this a lot more in depth if you guys want to check that out. But basically, we want to use Go prepaid cards that Navy Federal offers to be able to liquidate all the money off of our Navy Federal card, or just even a little bit of it and then pay it back, which is the ideal thing, to be able to show Navy Federal that we're spending on that card and then paying it back to show good payment history. So use the prepaid cards, and you guys can get up to 5 of these gold prepaid cards, and then you can load money onto those basically prepaid debit cards with your Navy Federal credit card. And then once you load money on those cards, on each card you can withdraw $600 per day. So if you add that up, 600 times 5, that's $3,000 a day that you can liquidate off a Navy Federal credit card. And once we do that, basically we just want to pay it back little by little over time. Also do some organic spending by, spending on travel, spending on groceries, spending on gas, things like that, to be able to organically spend and show transaction history on this card. And then we can ask for credit limit increases and probably get approved for that 8K limit. And one of the biggest gems that I want to tell you guys is you guys can actually apply after that first credit limit increase. After the first 3 months, after the first 3 statement cycles with that card, then you're going to want to apply for the credit limit increase every 6 months. And this is where you should get approved for that 8K. So let's just go into a scenario, right? If you got approved, let's just say you're starting with a low limit on that card. You got approved for 5K. I don't even know if this is possible. I think one of the minimum credit limits is 10K. So let's just say you get approved for 10K on the Flagship card. This is very common, and it's not unheard of getting a $10,000 limit on this card. Me, for example, I have this card, I think at around 25K, because I already have a cash rewards card, the green card with Navy Federal, sitting around, I think it's 38K. And soon, in a month or two, I want to be able to increase that credit limit. But in my case, I have to be careful because the maximum credit exposure with Navy Federal is 80,000 across all of your cards. So if you have 2 cards with 40K, that's the max credit you guys can have. If you have 1 card with 80K, the Flagship, that's the max you can have. So the max credit exposure with them is 80K. So you guys want to be aware of that. But I want to tell you guys, even if you start with a 10K credit limit, let's say on the Flagship card or any other card with them, after some time, you guys can ask for a product change into the Flagship card and then slowly start building your credit. So let's say you got the Flagship card at 10K. After 3 months, you can then increase your credit limit to 18K, right? Now that you have that 18K, 6 months later, right, 6 statement cycles later, you can then ask for another credit limit increase at 8K. And if you've been doing the manufacturer spending, you've been doing the transaction history, you should get approved for that maximum credit limit increase of 8K. So now we were at 18K. We asked for the second credit limit increase 6 months later. Now we're at 26K. Wait another 6 months, ask for another 8K. And we're sitting at 34K in just a year and 3 months after getting that card. So in a year and 3 months, you can technically increase the credit limit on any card that you get by $24,000 by getting 3 credit limit increases at $8,000. If you guys are catching what I'm saying, that's why Navy Federal is one of the best and most sought after credit unions in the game, just because they allow you to get very high limits out the gate and then increase those limits very, very fast, very, very soon. So let's just say you started with a 25K limit, which is pretty common when it comes to getting this card. You start at a 25K limit. The first 3 months after you get the card, you can ask for your first credit limit increase, right? So 25K then goes to 33K. 6 months after you get to 33K, you can ask for another credit limit of 8K. You get 41K. And then 6 months after that, ask for another one, and you're at 49K, almost $50,000 in just a year and 3 months of having that card. And that's why Navy Federal is one of the best institutions when it comes to credit cards and high credit limits. So those are the big gems that a lot of people don't want to tell you when it comes to getting approved for this card and then increasing that limit all the way to $80,000. If we were to keep doing that math on the 49K card, in another 6 months, we would get 57. And then another 6 months, we would get 65. And then another 6 months, we would get 73. And then finally, we would get the 80K after another 6 months. So in basically 2 years and a half, right? Let's just say 2 years and a half. If you maybe miss a couple months or you don't do it every 6 months, let's just say 2.5 years to 3 years, you can have that card at $80,000 if you just are diligent with it and ask for a credit limit increase every 6 months using the card responsibly. You guys can get to that 80K limit super duper easily and super fast. Remember, we got to remember this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. We're thinking about in the future, 5+ years, 10+ years of how our credit can look if we do something today. So that's what we want to do. And that's how we're able to achieve that credit limit. So now that you guys know that, let's talk about some conclusion and key takeaways from this video. We know that there's an $80,000 credit limit potential on this card. You guys can get that 80,000 credit limit if you follow the step-by-steps that I mentioned before. And this card has great cashback rewards of 3x on travel and 2x on every other purchase. So these are the biggest key takeaways. This is an unparalleled card, and I recommend it to anyone who wants to get into the credit game and start their credit journey. So I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Go ahead and leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and of course, stay tuned for more tips. We're going to be talking about a lot of things Navy Federal, and I'm going to be breaking down a lot more institutions. So go ahead and stay tuned. We want to reach that 800 credit score and unlock our credit potential by getting products like the Navy Federal Flagship card and many other cards. So if that interests you and you guys actually want to learn how to get that Navy Federal pledge loan for $40,000, go ahead and click this video in the middle of the screen to be able to check that out. And I'm going to catch y'all in that video. Peace.